there, Shawna Karrasch here with another Ask Shawna answer. Okay, this one says, this one's from Emily, and she says, hi Shawna, I bought a horse 7 months ago, and we're trying to get to know each other. He's a bit different from the horses I've had in the past, being a sensitive soul. He's not really skittish, but he needs to have focus on everything except me. I guess he doesn't feel I can be trusted yet, but I don't seem to be making any progress. Getting mad at him just makes him freak out. I have managed to get him loading nicely using positive reinforcement, so I think that is the way to go. Any tips or tricks how to get him to focus and bond with me? Yes, Emily, this is a great question, and this is a foundation behavior, if you ask me. It's a foundational skill that I want every horse to have and know how to do this, because when we have a focused horse who can relax and look to us for comfort and clarity and instruction, we have a horse who can let go of all the other stuff, and that we can get behavior. Training behavior is easy. You can get horses to do stuff, you can make horses to do stuff, you can get them to do it with a great deal of frustration or a great deal of distraction and not focus. That's not great. You know, I mean, that's easy. So the tricky part is, and I've always said this, the training stuff is easy. It's training the attitude and getting the attitude right that's the trickier part, but it is the key part. So that's when we get that, we have a horse, we can train anything, but it really is trying to get that part sorted out, and that's what you're looking at a bit. Now that you say he kind of stares at everything but you, so he doesn't seem like he's getting nervous. He's very nervous. I imagine, from what I can tell, I've seen these horses before, and I call them, this is just kind of what I think of them as, so they seem like internal worriers. So he's worried. He just, instead of going, wah, 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 he just kind of goes and stares off. My low Burry, he's an off-the-track thoroughbred who didn't like life. He was a really unhappy horse, and he has made great strides. He is doing so much better. So he is happier in this world, but he didn't like people. He didn't trust people. He didn't like the world. He just didn't see a value in much of anything people had to offer. But what he'd do, he would just freeze. Now, a lot of people would look at that and think, well, that's much nicer to ride than somebody who reacts. But in honesty, I would rather him show me how he feels, because those ones, when they're internal worriers, they can keep it in and keep it in and keep it in till they can't keep it in. And then they lose it as big as life, you know, and then you're like, whoa, what all is that about? So I find that using the kind of recognizing that and knowing that he is a worrier. He's just worrying about it in a different fashion. You know, he shows it in a different way. Sometimes horses are just like that. That's kind of their tendency. They can be born with this trait. But for some horses, they've learned to do this. So they've been, you know, a horse that's looked off, then they get corrected. Then they're like, well, don't show them that I'm worried about it. So they're still taking it in. And the hard part with that is their head is still just as worried, even though they're physically not showing it, or people will use equipment to, you know, to kind of limit what they can do. So they kind of need to cooperate. So those aren't great things, because their head is still where it's always been. The horse that can choose to do it, can choose to put himself in a frame, can choose to ride in a better way, or to walk in a better, whatever those pieces are, and stay focused. That's a bigger thing. So one of the things I do when I'm working with horses like that, in the very beginning, if I have one, you know, there's those horses you lead and you feel like you're not really with me at all. And they don't know anything. Like, I've come in to work them. They don't know me. They're not interested in me, but I do have food, so that helps. So I do my foundation. I do the bridge conditioning. I do 3 5-minute sessions a day with a clicker, only the clicker. And I'll do 3 5-minute sessions a day with the targeting. And I will interject some liberty leading in there as well. So that all kind of helps to connect with the training. Now I have a clicker that tells him, yes, what you've just done is correct. I have a target in order to guide and help focus and things if I need to. But those pieces need to be in place before you go out and try and tackle this bigger issue. So I do those in a place where I find they're most comfortable, whether it's a stall, whether it's a paddock, wherever they live, and they seem to be the most comfortable and focused. And if they live with a bunch of others, I would do it like make a little, sometimes I use those step-in electric fence posts, and make a little paddock. I just use the white tape. It doesn't have to be electrified. They just stay away from it. But I can make a little area right near his friends, just on the outside, that's temporary. But it gives me a place to kind of take him and work with him a little bit, where I can work with him safely and not have resource guarding with the other horses and social, things going on, social dynamics changing everything. But I can keep him where he's as safe as he can feel. So I take him out and I work on those things. I'm going to give you a good example. There's a horse, I use examples a lot. There's a horse that I was working with when I first got to New Mexico, and he was an ex-jumper, and he was big and startled by the world. So you would go out and he would just go like this. Now he could go and take that energy in a bigger place, but so I taught him the target. So when we would go out, I try to use a target and try to use a target. And so we'd walk a few steps. That's a target, kind of preventative. So instead of waiting till he's in trouble, or in trouble meaning so distracted and let off, I tried to prevent it. So prevention is always easier and more effective tool than having to undo it. So I would go along and I would, as he would look off a little bit, I try to use a target. If I lost him to something, I'd say, hey, Costner, can you target? And I'd hold that out in front of him. And you would see him go, oh, okay. And then we'd touch that. And I would click as he touched it. So I'd click as he touched it. And then what I started doing is I would start waiting. I'd click till he's touch it. And then you'd see him check in with me. So his eye, instead of being out here, his eye was like, what's up? And he would check in with me. So now I started clicking when his eye came to me. Now, it didn't have to be his whole head looked at me, but you could tell when the eye's like this, and when the eye kind of goes, okay. And you can tell when they take you back into their center of focus. So I would click that moment. And then as we go along, pretty soon he would stare off and I would just wait. And I might even say Costner. If I felt like he was ramping up and getting worse, I would use a target. But a lot of times I would just wait for a second and I'd see him go, hello. And he would start checking in with me. So he would let go of it and realize that the sooner he checks in with me, the sooner he could get reinforced. So that can do a lot for directly dealing with the focus going out with things. But I think the bigger thing is what you want to do is start creating a better relationship with people. I don't think that this is probably just you. I imagine he has this relationship either with most everybody, or like my Murray is really good when he knows people. He has to get to know people and feel like he's going to have success. If you're kind of tense or unhappy or unfamiliar, then he doesn't respond well to that. So he is a good litmus test for where people are. So while he's really good with me and he's really good with just a small handful of people, he'll be okay for others, but he's really trusting with this small handful of people. So he's one that each person kind of needs to earn their way with him because he had so much to trust. Over time, will be better and better. But so your horse could be that he's had a good person or two or three, and he needs to know the people before he gets there. So it's a process of getting to know them. But in the beginning, Murray didn't like anybody. He didn't think people in general were a great thing. So we don't know which it is, but in either case, I still needed to, while I'm trying to shift his attitude to be better, I still needed to give him an opportunity to learn things all on his own and have huge success for little approximations. So he started learning it's safe to think. It's safe to think outside the box. It's safe to try things. And it really did a lot for building up his confidence. So I couldn't just sit there and go, work on your attitude. I needed to work on things where I could dress the attitude. So what I would look for is at times he would be softer, relaxing, trying a little bit more. So I used teaching him stuff to actually shape the attitude. But I'd reinforce a lot. I paid attention to a lot of his body language and facial features. So when his eyes didn't look so worried, but they looked a little softer. When his nose didn't look so tight, it looked a little softer. His lips didn't look tight. His chin, his jowl, his head position, his ears, his tail, his feet, all those things. I looked for those to get softer and softer, and I reinforced the times I felt like he was softening or paid extra attention to him. So it wasn't the main criteria, but when I got one that was a little bit more confident or a little bit softer, I drew extra attention to it. So that's what I'd recommend is teaching him some things. I'm going to recognize some things. You're like, yeah, like what? I'm going to recommend you go to my podcast. So it's called Equine Clicker 101. And I have Liberty leading on there. I have stationary target. I have picking up their feet. And teaching them to pick up their feet is a good one. Not you picking up their feet. You teach them to pick and hold their feet up. Or teaching them, so doing other things, the target and the stationary target, a little bit of duration, and those things can do a lot for helping them to build up that relationship with you in the process. And that, I think that will be your best way to go. It is building the relationship with you, but it's also building the relationship with the training. We have a tendency to think, well, yeah, it's great, it's good. But sometimes it takes horses longer to decide that it's as good as we know it is. But it takes them a while to trust that, depending on the horse and their individual nature. So it's kind of a big, broad topic with a lot of big, broad thoughts. And I always have more in my head. So I can't say them all because I'd be teaching a weekend clinic on this answer, but there's always a lot more in my head. So if you're going along and you hit an impasse, or you're not sure, what to do next, please don't hesitate just to reach right back out. So you can go to, as you know, because you've sent this question in, you can go to Ask Shawna at www.on-target-training.com. And you can find the Ask Shawna where you submit the questions. You can find the YouTube videos where you can watch Ask Shawna's. And you can find my podcast all on that website, as well as products or whatever people want. And also another thing I'm going to encourage you to do is go to our Terra Nova Training Center website. Because we have a place you can sign up for our newsletter where you're going to stay abreast of what we're doing and what we're up to and where we're going and the workshops we're having here. So that's another good way to stay in touch and stay with what we're doing. So it's terranovatrainingcenter.com, or you can just search Shawna Karrasch and you're going to find all of it. Anyway, so I hope that helps you out. It's a really good question, Emilie, and it's the $1 million question. It's the $1 million skill, if you ask me, when they can focus and trust us. And it just takes a little bit of time. But working on that eye contact, I would also work on the liberty leading with the downward transitions. And that is lesson 2 of the podcast. The downward transitions is the settling and the quieting. The settling and the quieting. So the downward transitions is when they're taking the energy back down. Taking their energy back down. Because what you really want, this is really good for impulse control, what you really want is him to learn to regulate his own energy and his own worry and to find safety in you. So, okay, there you go. So, I hope that helps you out, gives you some ideas, some things to think about. And again, if you have more questions, you know where to go. And until next time, enjoy getting your horse on target. Bye.